So we'll move into the discover and connect phase. And in discover and connect, you'll build and apply background knowledge through these individual and collaborative explorations. This is rigorous academic content that's going to be in the discover and connect. So make sure you have your thinking cap on and you're utilizing the resources. And one of the first resources that's available in this section is to watch this video. And I'll click it so we can take a look at it. But this video is actually by meteorologist Claire Nasir. She talks about the dangers of ultraviolet waves, which, yes, she talks about the overexposure and ways to protect yourself. And that's further discussed and explored once you go into the read article that's here for you. And it talks about how to protect yourself as well. And so you definitely want to make sure to go over to the left and look at each of those categories because they break it up into the different waves here. And so you can click on it to look at each one, okay? Moving back into the project plan, in this section, we're starting to look at product design because you'll actually be moving into the design phase or preparing for the design of your project. So you definitely want to read about product design here. We also have for you some characteristics of a good design as written by Dieter Rams. And he is actually a world-renowned product designer, and he works for Braun. And then after that, this is a really, really important read section because it talks about the mathematical ideas that you're going to be communicating through your financial graphs. And we'll talk about those graphs in just a second when we look at the second assignment, but you'll need to really remember that you have this available to you in this read section because it also has 15 examples of those graphs that you might want to use or even just to use as you create your own, okay? The Discover and Connect assignments, though, the first one is the research guide. And remember, when you click on that, that's going to force you to make that copy. And so you'll see for the research guide, it starts with the research information. And so this is just yet more information on both positives and negatives of the waves that exist around us from the electromagnetic spectrum. But after you read through that research that's been provided for you, you'll actually move into the second page. And that second page is actually taking you into the questions that are going to help guide your research. See. So the first question is all about identifying. So you have to actually identify the harmful effect that your product is going to protect against. And then you want to start looking at questions 2 and 3, which start to talk about the actual design of the product. So it has you think about your end users and also your research that you're going to conduct to look at your products if you're going to be adapting or repurposing a product. Remember, I mentioned saving that IQS directory, this one here. This is definitely a place where it can come in handy because you'll need to, for the second question, talk about a product that might already exist. I'm sorry, for the third question, you'll talk about a product that already exists and how you can adapt or repurpose it for your own. Now, if you're creating your own, you can just talk about one of the products that you might find on that list or in your own research and then share your explanation there, but you don't have to use that if you choose to use a product or design a product of your own, okay? So if we go back into the project, you'll see the second assignment for the Discover and Connect phase is actually the prototype brief. I'm going to pull that up here. And so what you'll see is in the prototype brief, this is where you're actually going to be talking about your product, either the one that you create or repurpose or adapt. But you'll see that each of the things that you'll be doing is describing and explaining your product, but this is also where you're going to do that market comparison. You'll be justifying here as well and creating a visual representation of your prototype. So there are some question prompts that follow that can help you finish up or complete the product brief. And we'll look into the parts. So the first part is part one, which is all about your product. And part two is that market comparison. Remember, again, that extension activity where you had to use the list, the IQS directory. Well, this is an abbreviated version of that. So you actually will choose a product and you'll compare and contrast it to your own. So you definitely want to choose a different product if you're repurposing or adapting one. And if you're creating one of your own, then you can definitely refer back to that IQS directory. There's also a link here to some visualization tools. And so as you're creating your own cost history graph and you're talking about your price point entry here, if you choose to do those graphs digitally, here's some sample tools for you. And then don't forget that read section that talks about the financial graphs and actually gives you 15 other examples. Okay. And then for part three, you're going to move into justifying your product. And so this is actually a bit of a self-reflection here. And so this is after you finish communicating your cost project, your cost history graphs and your price point information, you'll move into this section. So what I do want to make sure to point out is that there is no requirement for how effective your product is. So please be honest with yourself when you think about this section or as you complete this section. Think about how well does your product actually protect against those harmful effects. So as you rate the effectiveness, consider if it's just a little, think about what you might be able to tweak in your design to move it to somewhat. But do not forget that it does not have to be the best protecting gear. It can just be a little. And if it is, that is okay. It still helps people and the environment. And if it's almost completely, then that's outstanding. You might even consider getting in touch with one of the companies from the IQS directory to share your design. The last thing that you're going to do for your prototype brief is you'll actually be sharing the visual of your design. So you can print this page and then sketch your design here and then take a photo and upload it. Or you can type, you can find an online photo of a product and type over it. And then if you're in the CTE design pathways, or if you're familiar with some of the platforms that they use, you're more than welcome to use those or any other online digital creating visual drawing tools, if you will.